cow. I love that song. I absolutely love that song. What a joy to hear it. Well, really well done. I mean, that's a song that's got maxed out on lyrics. And, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ed Conrad, and I approve of this message. Okay? Or maybe I should withhold that till later, but anyway, I have to say that it's really not often in my life that I really feel joy. It's an honest statement. You know, joy is a rare thing. Now, happiness is one thing, but real joy, being alive, being in this body, having this experience, for me doesn't come along very frequently, but I'm really touching into that here this morning. It's the joy of reconnecting with a lot of you that I haven't seen in 8 or 9 years or longer. This is a return for me on many levels, somewhat of a prodigal journey for me to come back to Fort Worth. Fort Worth was where I was born and raised. And I wanted to touch into that. I'm living in Eugene, Oregon now, and have been out there for 8 years. Glad to be there, and probably will be there for a long time to come. I love Oregon. But I also love Texas, and I also love Fort Worth. The interesting thing about what is happening this morning is that I'm here at this particular locale. And why is that significant? Well, this is College Avenue right here, this next street over. That is the street upon which I was conceived. It's a true story. My mother and father got together and on College Avenue down here, it would have been somewhere this side of Daggett School. I've forgotten the address number, but it was on College Avenue, and they had a little small 2-bedroom house, and that's where I was conceived, on College Avenue. And also, the church that I attended was for 18 years, that I grew up in, where I fought mightily against what was being taught there, all right? But there were some good things that came out of it, one of which it was very clarifying of what I didn't agree with, okay? It helped to instigate this journey that I've been on to try to figure out and understand what is true for me in this life. There's the old church over here just south of Rosedale, just off Hemphill. It used to be called Central Methodist Church. It's now Arbor Lawn Methodist Church. My parents were a part of that church for 75 years. They met each other in that church when they were 12 years old. They got married in that church when they were 19. And they were dedicated, completely dedicated, body, soul, and spirit, to the welfare of that ministry. That was a huge part of their lives. They attended this school that's just a block away. Went to high school here, what was the old Central High School in the early 40s and before it was called Pascal. They went to school together there. I was born at Harris Hospital. So there's a lot of touchstones for me in showing up at this particular location. I've got so much emotion moving through me right now about that. In the last 2 years, both of my parents have passed on. And that alone brings up a lot of feeling for me in this moment. Both of them, as is true for all of us, our parents are so significant, no matter what the nature of our relationship was with them. So my topic today is the heart of love, and I cannot stand here and be with you today in this locale with all of you, many of whom I know and appreciate and love, without really connecting with the essence of what that is, the heart of love. My mother, share a little story about both my mother and father. They were moved to Colorado to live near my sister about 2009, and it was 2 years ago, August 4th, that my mother made her transition. And I was in Portland, Oregon at the time. My sister was there with my mother. She called me on my cell phone to tell me that, Mom was unconscious and it was unlikely that she was going to make it for another 5 or 10 minutes. This was her time. So we talked about that and shared our feelings about it, and then I hung up, and then about 5 minutes later she called back and said, Mom is wide awake. And she wants to talk to you. So she put my mother on the phone, and so we had an opportunity, my mother and I, she very lucidly expressed how much she loved and appreciated me. And I had the opportunity to say the same thing to her. And it was genuine, it was real, it was true. I so appreciated my mother. And I watched her as she transformed over the years to where she was this rock of Gibraltar, where I could not feel love coming from her when I was growing up as a boy. And it affected me. But watched over the years, through the decades, how she began to open even more and more and more. She became this beautiful blossoming flower the last 30 years of her life with me. She was so loving, so kind, so generous, and supportive in every possible way. Yeah. And so I had my opportunity to say my goodbye to her and tell her how much I loved her, and then we hung up, and then about 5 minutes later, my sister called back and said, Mom is gone. That was that. It was her time, and we had that one moment to be together in that way. And then here last October, I was with my father, and I was there for the last 8 hours of his life and there for his last breath, and had an opportunity also to be with him in that way and to say my goodbyes to him and to once again express from my heart how much I loved and appreciate all that he had given me, which is too broad, the list is too long to be able to talk about that here today. But he was truly a man who had a lot of heart, who loved people, and he passed that on to me. What life is really about loving others, and he did that so well. So I want to say to you today that I want to remind you, because I need to remind myself of this, is that each one of us here, in fact, I was talking with my friend Marian about this. I've been staying with my friends Kathy and Marian, and I want to thank them for that while I've been here. Reminded him and reminded myself that in order to be here, even here right now, to have this experience with you, and to share some things that I really feel are vital and important to why we're all here, the fact that this is happening, and we're having this experience in this human spiritual reality, is really the outgrowth of winning what you might call a cosmic lottery. Each one of us here has won the lottery just in having this experience. It's the most amazing of all things that life has come together in this form, in this way, to give us this opportunity to experience this life in this way and connect in the most authentic, beautiful, loving ways that we do. Wow. And life is imperfect, so sometimes it doesn't show up that way. But we gather, okay, it's true, we know that, but we gather together in these places to remind ourselves of really what's behind all the ways in which life doesn't show up the way we'd like for it to. That really behind all this is love attempting to work itself out through us. Divine love. And that never stops. So remember that. You've won the cosmic lottery just to be here in this life to have this experience. For me, which all began here, 64 years, 5 months, so many days ago for me, right down the street. So everything points to love. Every experience that we have in life points to that. No matter what the experience is, even if it's that which seems so unlike love that you're convinced that love just doesn't exist anymore. Well, that points out to us, again, how far we have removed ourselves from the truth of what is. It's just there to remind us that love is at the core, is at the very marrow of how life is and how we could possibly be even having this experience. So in my first church a long time ago, and it was a long time ago because I'm not in church ministry anymore, I've been out of it for more than 2 years now. But in the very first church I was in Savannah, Georgia, the very first couple of weeks I was there, I had a local artist make a banner, a beautiful artistic banner, and on the banner were 3 words, and the first 2 were those 2. And you can imagine what the third word was. God is love. And so I go back to that today. That was back in 1987. And I still stand in that place today of representing what I believe to be the essence of all messages from all traditions. If they were to converge, into 3 words, that would be the message, that God is love. There's probably a few of you here that may disagree with that. But if you were to explore this in your heart, then you would agree that God is love. I remember, and I'm speaking a lot about my Fort Worth experiences here. Fort Worth has largely been very good to me. And I told you about the church that I grew up in, the Central Methodist Church right down the street over here off of Lipscomb. And I still remember this. And it really had an impact on me. You know, we're so open, we're so receptive when we're a small child. And I remember being in nursery school, 4 years old. And we had what seemed like a life-size poster on the wall in there of Jesus as portrayed as the shepherd, holding this tiny little lamb in his arms with this beatific look on his face. But right next to that was standing the Sunday school teacher. And she's saying to me, she's saying to those of us sitting there, these 4-year-olds, she's saying to us, now those of you who don't believe that Jesus has come to earth to die for your sins, was crucified for that reason, if you don't believe that, then you won't go to heaven. And so the contrast of what I was seeing on the poster, of Jesus holding this little lamb and embracing it with his beatific, loving presence that was just unmistakable. And yet I'm being told that, well, that only is true for a certain number of people. And then everybody else is excluded. Okay. Now, how many here got some kind of message like that when you were coming through your childhood? Okay? Several people raised both hands, so you got it. You got it from both sides. You know, you've got it in your family, you've got it in church, wherever you went, you've got messages like that where there was some kind of exclusive club that you had to find your way into. And if you didn't know the secret, the key to unlock that door to get into that secret club, that you were doomed. And I can tell you as a 4-year-old, if I had words to try to describe that, which I didn't, I was confused, I'll say that. But as an adult looking back on it, what I was feeling was, this is insane. It's just pure insanity. So I recognize that I differ from a whole lot of people out in the world who have another point of view about that, including my Sunday school teacher when I was 4 years old. But I have to say from very, very early on, there's something in me that knew that when it comes to love, there are no exclusions. There are no exceptions. I hear you hearing this. I feel you hearing this. There are no exceptions and no exclusions. Wherever you are, God is. Wherever you are, love is. No matter where you come from, what you believe, what you were taught, love is all there is. Every so often I get carried away and I will break out in song. And I'm not going to do that today. But I'm reminded of the sound for God, which is also the sound that helps us to resonate with our heart. The very marrow core of what we are that is untouched by all the other things of the world other than love. Where love resides, the sound that reminds us of this is the ah sound. Ah, ah. You cannot even just utter the sound without feeling a certain kind of vibration that comes over you. Ah, ah. because every name for God in most all traditions has this sound, whether it's God, it's even a Germanic term, they even found a way to bring it into that language, or Yahweh, or Buddha, or Krishna, or Allah. Jesus' name was Allah. That was the Aramaic, the Allah. That ah sound. So, the sounding of the ah not only brings the divine into your midst, but it also helps you to resonate with that experience in your heart. The ah sound is designed to connect you with the heart of God, the heart of love here. Now, when I speak of the heart, I think we all know this, but I'll just give you a slight review. When I speak of the heart here, it's not just about the physical presence of this most amazing mechanical pump in the center of your chest that literally beats in the average lifetime over 1 billion times. I'm speaking of this field of energy that goes with you wherever you are, wherever you go, especially if you are doing your spiritual work and practice of connecting there. The energy that your heart emanates is its incredibly powerful field of transformation and healing. Science has now proven this to be a fact. It's the greatest balancing presence in your life. So if you're really good at connecting with your mind, with your body, with your soul and spirit, this is what I've found through the years. Each of us has our areas where we're really, really good in focusing. But the one area that gets neglected most often is this connection with our center, our marrow, our heart. So I'm bringing that reminder back to you today, again, to tend to your heart. Why is heart disease one of the greatest, issues in terms of health? It's because many of us have forgotten. We haven't been taught how to really connect with our hearts and to live from that place daily and to breathe into our hearts and to not only sense and feel our heartbeat, but to notice and to connect with this energy that is present if we are connecting with our hearts, that expands out sometimes more than 10 feet beyond our physical presence. Okay? That is 1,000 to 5,000 times, the field itself is 1,000 to 5,000 times more powerful than the electromagnetic field that emanates from our brains. We tend to be a very brain-focused culture, and it has its place. But when it comes to working through the issues of relationships, connecting, resolving issues in our world that are most important, that will change the world, then we have to be in our hearts for that to work. So I'm going to remind you also, and because I constantly reminding myself of this, and I constantly reminded myself of that when I wrote this book. It took a full year after I got out of church ministry to write it and create it full time for 1 year. It's called Heart Power, and it's a daily companion book. It has an inspirational writing for every day of the year. And in that process, I realized, because part of why I left church ministry finally after 26 years was I was not tending to myself. I was not tending to my own heart. I was not following my own guidance. I was not following what I was out there teaching to those who were with me and around me. I was not a very good student. And so I finally said, I've got to stop. I've got to stop and come back to me and tend to me. And in that journey in the last 2.5 years, what I realized is how small I'd made this circle that I tried to crawl into. And what I mean by that is that this tiny little circle of unconditional love, I'd made it so small, and I've been trying to force my way to get in there. There's just no room for me in there. I had not accommodated that for myself. I had accommodated that for just about everyone else. I wanted everyone else to experience unconditional love and to connect with this powerful presence in the midst of your life. My life was about that, but I had neglected that in my own right. So I realized how contracted that circle of love for me, how small I'd made that. So I needed to find a way to begin to realize that I need to stand in the center of a circle that has no circumference. Okay. Because this is the nature of love. This is the nature of God. That begins and ends right here for each one of us. So there's a huge difference between breathing into my life every day in my heart and recognizing that I stand at the very center of my universe that has no boundaries, no borders, no barriers to love's expression. None. Because my greatest challenge, as I find it is for most all of us sitting in this room today, is the second half of Jesus' great teaching, his great commandment, which is to love thyself. And without that, we are in a far-off country. And we remain there until, what? Something in us wakes up. And we turn our attention toward home. Here. Tend to what is home here. And then you will, what? Find what you've been looking for your whole life. Out here. And so when we say in these schools of thought and teaching, go within, what do we mean? What are we teaching when we say go within? Teaching is this very thing. Go within so that you can develop the capacity. Because it is a learned capacity. Develop the capacity to stretch the circle of love that is in the center of you, to where eventually you come to experience it as a circle with no circumference, no boundaries, no borders. So that thing that my nursery school teacher was teaching about these exclusive clubs, that only love could be, would be given to certain people, right, was BS. Okay. It was, and you can make that mean whatever you want it to mean, okay? And people are well-intentioned. They are. We know that. People that sit in these places, like me, even standing here, we're all well-intentioned. Okay? But this is the way I see it. Okay? So how large is your circle of love? Your heart. Well, the only way you can know this is to start to give attention to it daily, to breathe into it, to connect to it, to close your eyes and ask that the heart of love come to you, to expand the circle in which you live and find yourself, so that love can make its home in you. You.
And Ed, when life begins as a fetus, the first thing that develops is the heart.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And the heart's wisdom builds the rest of the being.
Hear, hear. So I'm going to close with this phrase, and I think I can remember it. I hope I can. Hope I can. I hope I can. In Jesus' language, those of you who know me from my past, every so often I would speak it in Jesus' tongue, which is carries a vibration with it, unlike English. All the things that the great seers and sages have said in other languages from other traditions, and so much has been lost in the way that that's been passed down through languages and ended up in English in our case. But this phrase that was spoken in the language of Jesus, I would just ask that you hear it and connect with your hearts. And as you hear it, listen with your heart. Tu vahun. Lalein dadkein, blebon dehinon, nezun, lalaha. Of course, we know this as, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are those who live lives in connection that are aligned with their hearts. They shall see God everywhere. You see your life differently. You feel your life differently. You communicate differently. You connect in ways that you have never imagined you could, because your heart is leading you. Because therein is where somehow the balance of all things come together in your heart. It's not an accident that it's in the Hindu system, the chakra system, that it's the fourth chakra. There's the three lower, the three upper, and the heart is the balancing point. So, if balance is what you seek, connect with your heart. So if you just take a moment to close your eyes here as we close this time. And again, just taking a moment to, as we did in the earlier meditation, to remember, those who have gone before us to show us the way. Those who live from their hearts. Those who have loved us fully, loved us as we are. Is to take that with you today. That wherever you are, wherever you go, that love goes with you, drawing you steadily toward the greater good of what your life is meant to be. Namaste.